Power of Four. Shift your perspective to change your life.
Welcome to the Power of Four. This is Jenny Capella. And at the Power of Four, we help people shift their perspective from what they're against to what they're for. Today's guest is perfect for that. His name is Lance Shuttler, and he's the CEO and founder of Ascent Nutrition. Now, when you think about healthcare, and you might think about, well, what am I against with healthcare, or where am I feeling stuck? There's a lot of places that people do feel stuck. They're afraid of the system, scared of the system, don't trust the system, looking for alternative ways to kind of move from being against something to being for something, which means moving from being reactive about our healthcare and the fears and concerns to being for, which would have to do with being for vibrant health for ourselves and having the products and the knowledge that we need to be able to do that. One of the things I greatly appreciate about Lance and his work is that it is very holistically based. So while he comes in through the door of the physical with his company, it impacts all aspects of us, spiritual, mental, and emotional. So very pleased to have him helping us navigate from being reactive to proactive with some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So Lance, with that, welcome to the show, and love to have you give us some background about how you got to where you're at with your company.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Thanks for having me. So, back about 16 years ago, little over, I had a family member, as my father. He was on some antidepressants and he had never been on anything. And he really was just seeking some help. It was a cold, dark winter, literally and metaphorically, in Iowa back at that time. And he really just was not doing well. And within a handful of months, he ended up taking his life. And that was the big wake up call for me. And it kind of just shocked me into having to look at a lot of things that were pretty uncomfortable. It didn't happen overnight, but it did start happening quickly. And, really what I mean by that is I had to look at what's actually going on in healthcare, in the hospitals, with pharmaceuticals, the money tied into all of that, the politics tied into all of that, and just started learning about what's actually going on. Excuse me. And it was very unsettling for sure, as and probably a lot of people listening know, when you start learning those things and seeing what's actually going on, you realize that the system has been set up to extort from us and not make us well, to actually make us sick, and do it so gradually over time so that they can take our resources, take our money, drain the bank accounts, feed their pockets, and just keep their system running. In general, that's how it works. Obviously, there's so many good people within healthcare and within the systems. It's not that, everyone's conspiring against humanity, but we know that the main decision makers, the ones at the very top, they have absolutely conspired, and they have definitely set this up in a way where, it's very clear what their incentives are and what their motivations are, especially today. We can see that very clearly. So, I started learning all that stuff, Jenny, and I really knew in my bones, like, this is so wrong and this is so corrupt. And I can't believe they're just like openly doing this and they're getting away with it. And you try talking to people, back at that time when I started learning, no one wanted to hear it. No one wanted to even think that something wrong was going on. Um, but it was just something that I knew that I needed to keep researching and learning more about because I could see that it was actually happening. So, I got into all of that. But, prior to, I really was always into health and wellness in exercise and playing sports and, just using my mind in different ways. I grew up playing online poker, and that was a way for me to start learning about uh, using technology online to make money, but also uh, how to use technology in a beneficial way and how to use my mind. So I've talked about this before, Jenny, where poker actually taught me a lot about life and actually set me up in a really good way mentally to take on some of these challenges that were ahead, namely discernment. It helped me learn discernment, and it helped me learn asking the right questions at the right times and trying to put pieces of the puzzle together. Because, like in chess or poker or, any card game or any sort of like game like that, there's always strategy. And you always have to ask, okay, why is this person doing this now? Why should I do this now? what are they thinking? What are they thinking that I'm thinking? So there's a lot of mind games with it. And so I was able to start learning more about how to use the left hemisphere of my brain and the right hemisphere. So tuning into the mathematical, the statistical, the analytical, learning game theory, the practical side of it, but then also really tapping into more of the intuition, because it is really that gut feeling in life, but also, in card games where something's just off, and you're not right all the time, but you start getting better and better at it. And so I was really tuning in and learning discernment and learning how to see through uh, illusions or things that weren't actually, true, when people would be bluffing or things like that. So long story short, that game really actually set me up to start to use my mind to think about better things for myself and what I wanted to create in my world, and then also how I can use that to help many others and, help change things where I can.
That's quite a story. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that it really taught you critical thinking, the poker.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So one of the things I wanted to ask you right off the bat was about the plethora of products that are out there and how we can get better at picking what's right for us. And I'll give you an example right off the bat to kind of prime the pump here. So over the years, I was looking for the probiotic for myself, right? Just something that was good and going to work. And in that process, I found that it's not as easy to figure even something like that out as somebody might think. So I would come across statements where you should only have dark brown bottles or blue, and then other people were saying plastic was fine. Other people were swearing that you have to refrigerate them. Other people say, no, our product, you don't have to refrigerate it. It's shelf stable. It'll go right where it needs to go. Then I find out that if it says 22 billion units or whatever the measurement is on the label, actually what's coming to your doorstep, that's true, maybe at the time of manufacturing, but by the time it hits your doorstep, it might be only 11. So like 50% reduction from the manufacturing point to the point where you're getting it. And you don't necessarily know that. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just adjust to that. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. And then the whole thing about sourcing and what kind there is and which ones are going to get past my stomach and down to past the, which ones to feed my small intestine, my large intestine. And finally, I've ended up with one that's a spore-based product because in theory, it's going all the way through and it doesn't need refrigeration. It's shelf stable. But there's still, even with that, a part of me that's like, is there more I have to learn? Like, so that's just probiotics. I mean, there's so many things out there. I could go on about my journey when I won't, but I could go on about my journey about vitamin C, right? Trying to figure out what I should take. And then all the fillers and things that can be in them. So I'd love for you to give the audience a sense of how can they pick like maybe some top things that are most important, like sourcing or those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jenny, and something that I've spent so much time on. So, when I got into nutrition and diet and supplements, we're all new at the beginning. So I was new when I started, and I started seeing, okay, there's a lot out there, but how are they different? And like, why is this one better than this? So I had to go through, the whole process of reading information, thinking, okay, this one's best, trying it, coming across new information. Oh, okay, that's not actually like fully accurate, or maybe it's not true, or it's partially true, and just keep doing more products, trying more products, reading more things, self-experimenting. So, it was a process for me. It still is, because there's always new things out there and always more information to learn. But what I quickly got into is first just seeing, okay, we want it to be as clean as possible. So what can people do immediately is look at the other ingredients in the product. Like, that's honestly one of the first things that I'll look at when I look at a product. Okay, what's in it? And from the active constituent side, what herb or nutrient or vitamin, whatever it is, what is it? And then I'll go right below that, other ingredients. What else is in it? And you really want that other ingredients to be none or as few as possible. It will depend on what the product is. Some things, like if it's a liquid, it will need something else in it, like vegetable glycerin or alcohol to help preserve. But people follow the point of, you want it to be as few as possible, ideally. And that's just in general. There can be things where You want certain things in there to make sure the product's stable and all that, but just in general, as few as possible. I'll also ideally make sure that it's organic. If it's not, then I'm asking the questions, okay, where was this grown? How was it grown? Did you guys use pesticides? Can you 100% confirm that you did not use pesticides? Will you put that in writing? Or is it somewhere on your website? Can we see any testing? Those sort of pesky questions. And it's time consuming. It can be, but it's important because there are a lot of companies and people just trying to get away with inferior, cheap stuff because they know a lot of people aren't asking the questions. They're just relying on their friend or their family member, or their doctor or whoever saying, yeah, take this, it's good. And that's fine because, some people don't want to spend the time researching. They just want to be told what to do. And that, I mean, everyone can do what they want. It's all good. For people that want to research and like actually specifically know, those are the things that I'm doing. So that process can help asking the questions for testing COAs, which is certificate of analysis, seeing what's actually in the product. Has it been sprayed with pesticides? Where is it grown? How is it grown? There's a lot of different questions you can ask, but those are the main ones really that I get into.
Mm.
And trying to get to that, what's the source of it, and how is this being done?
Excellent. Because, yeah, on your end, that just reminds me, you have to ask those same questions for the ingredients that you're putting into your products that then you can use to verify on your website and when you sell products. Hey, we've sourced this from great places, or places even that where it's more indigenous, where it wasn't just grown in some greenhouse or something, or hothouse, whatever the word is, that it's actually indigenous to the area, and how much that can really help as well for the validity of the product and the quality of the product. So my next question actually kind of leads right into comes from what we were just talking about, which is cell absorption. So that's another thing I've been studying. So it's really interesting to me that somebody could have great blood tests, thyroid test comes out great, other tests come out great, but they're still not feeling well. And so that led me down another topic of study, which was cell absorption, and finding out that the receptors on the cells, if they're not, working, or inside of the cell, if it's not taking in proper osmosis, or however it works, you would know better than I would. We can take all kinds of great products all day long, but there has to be that absorption. So is there anything that you've learned about on that topic that could help the audience understand that piece of it as well?
Yeah, definitely. And it ties in, really well with gut dysbiosis, or just in general gut issues. If people aren't absorbing nutrients into the cells, often it will go back to them having issues with the gut. And, in general, I'd say most of the people in the US, or a majority, we could say, probably suffer isn't the right word, but are limited in our abilities to digest food because of impaired digestion, and just the digestive system not working best. And why is that? There's a lot of reasons, but in general, it's because of all the pesticides that are sprayed everywhere. It gets into the water. Then when we're taking showers or a bath, we're absorbing those pesticides, the pharmaceuticals in the water, just the general crap that's being sprayed in the air, sprayed in the ground, or, on the soil. All of that eventually makes its way into the water table, and we then are absorbing that. Even if we're using filters, like I support that, I do that myself, but most of them can only get so much. But in general, America, we have so many gut issues. When I was doing health coaching, Jenny, I had 8 out of 10 clients that would come in, they had gut issues, and that was the main thing. Other things going on, but it was always digestion related, not digesting well, upset stomach, bloating, gas, things like that. And so what I focused on was a couple things: was detoxing, but also helping nutrients get into the cells, and giving nutrients that can help repair the gut. So
Mm.
glutamine is one of them. Glutamine is an amino acid, very simple, easy to buy. We don't even sell it, but it was always one of the main things that I would suggest for people, because glutamine, that amino acid, actually is a physical component of the digestive tract and of the intestines, and basically throughout the digestive system. So it can help to repair the lining of the gut. And we had a lot of people who actually felt it and noticed significant positive effects.
Mm.
So that's part of it, but then also humic and fulvic acid. So if we go back to the soil, it's being sprayed with pesticides. The nutrients aren't in there anything close to what it was, just some decades ago. We've all heard this by now, but also with that, the soil then doesn't have the same amount of humic and fulvic acids. And these are acids they're plant acids. Is basically decomposed organic material, often plant material, soil, microbes, things like that. That it's essentially alchemized in a way where all of that is broken down in the soil and basically, composted, so to speak, and it creates this black dirt or this rich humus, rich soil. And that's the humic and fulvic acid. But part of what that does on a plant level is those humic and fulvic acids help to shuttle nutrients in from the soil into the plant. Now, when they're spraying pesticides and they're tilling the ground in non-natural ways, that humic and fulvic has a harder time not only getting into the plants, but actually being even present in the soil. So our humic and fulvic content in general is limited, or it's gone down in the monoculture, crop farming. So we need to get that in the diet again. Eating organic is a great way to help do that. But even organic, I mean, these systems have been co-opted where the USDA organic label isn't as strong as it once was. A lot of people still don't trust it, and rightfully so. There's great things with it. And again, I'd say probably most of the people in it, they're probably great people and they genuinely are trying to make it good and pure and clean. It's the system at a whole that has shifted things from a financial perspective to, if they put that label on it, they can sell it for more and make more money. So what are the actual standards being done? Because you can stamp and give approvals, but what's actually happening in the fields, what's happening at the level where we as the consumer don't see. So, kind of going back to that humic and fulvic acid, that was something that I would also suggest for people with the glutamine. The humic and fulvic is known to bind to many different toxins, including heavy metals, pesticides, and just general toxins, general cellular toxins that are produced every moment and can help to detox. But then also the fulvic, it binds to different nutrients and can actually shuttle them into cells. It's, quite incredible. There's a doctor out there, Dr. Daniel Newsom. He's the expert on humic and fulvic, and he has a great analogy that he said many times. Fulvic acid is like the garbage man and the mailman at the same time. So it's taking out the waste, and then it also will shuttle nutrients into the cells. So it's pretty incredible. He's used it for a lot of different things in his programs and his treatments. That's one of the main reasons why we offer it, because I started using it myself and I could see what it was doing for me. I saw it was what it was doing for others. And so I knew, like, I mean, I literally made a vow to myself and to God that I would get this stuff out there as much as I could, because I knew that this was a powerful ally for us humans and the pets too, and animals, um, that a lot of people didn't know about and still don't know about.
Interesting. Then that brings up my next question. This is flowing perfectly with the questions that I've got. So the next one is about detox, and you've touched on that already a bit. But I'm thinking about, all the people who heard horror stories about detox, like, okay, you go on a detox, you're going to get really sick, or you're going to feel bad, etc. And I'd love to have you talk about the gentle approach, or how it can be more gentle. Depends on the person, of course, and what they're trying to detox. But I know that you've got your liver detox product, the humic and fulvic acid, and I've used those myself, and I felt wonderful in terms of it's so gentle. And then I run out, and that's when I notice, because I see what they were doing gently to help me, and I didn't even know. So I just love that. And then, of course, any pine products I can get my hands on, I always love those too. So I'd love to have you talk about detox in general and how that is so important to us, and how it doesn't have to be a war zone where we're like knocked out and we can't even work because we've got, brain fog or all these different things coming up.
Yeah, yeah, great question, Jenny. So, um, in general, we've designed these to be gentle, but still some people have strong effects, and strong, not a Herxheimer reaction.
Mm.
We haven't really had people report that. And for people that don't know what that is, a Herxheimer reaction is where you're detoxing. So a lot of people will have this with, let's say, turpentine or other strong drugs or things like that. Ivermectin can even induce this, where it's the body's natural reaction to getting rid of a bunch of toxins at once. It basically floods the bloodstream with toxins.
Mm,
It can be parasites, worms that are being killed off. So there's like a die-off effect is what they call, or what they call it. And so a person can get pretty sick and pretty ill. In general, it's not life-threatening. I mean, again, I'm if someone's going to do something like that, take turpentine or take ivermectin, you should do it, with proper guidance for sure, and know what you're getting into, especially the turpentine. And turpentine, just so people know, and I'll tie all this together, turpentine comes from pine trees. And so people might think I'm talking about paint thinner. I'm not talking about paint thinner. Paint thinner can be turpentine, or turpentine can be used as paint thinner, but I'm talking about what comes from the trees naturally. And this compound is so strong, Jenny, that it will induce a Herxheimer effect for most people if you take even just a little bit of it. And so it can have a kill off or die off effect, and people can start to react negatively. And ultimately, coming back to your question, what that means is when you have a Herxheimer reaction, it's very uncomfortable and it's not something that you really feel like doing again. I
yeah.
mean, I did this myself with a very small amount of turpentine and had a, basically parasite and worm die off effect. And for a day and a half, I was very sick. I didn't have to go to the hospital. I knew I was fine. I wasn't, deathly ill, but I was extremely sick and extremely tired and extremely like brain fog. And so I knew it worked, but it's not something where, okay, if someone's wanting to buy a product, you got to plan for that. And I mean, it would take another few weeks or so to build yourself back up, even just mentally,
Mm,
to want to put yourself through that again, because it can knock you down, and it often does.
mhm.
Now with our products, we've got it where they're very gentle because it's not just straight turpentine. I mean, that's a very powerful compound. We're getting pine needles, the pine pollen, and we're extracting in a way where it's strong, but it's not going to induce that sort of Herxheimer reaction. And so we want it to be just that, where people can feel it when they're taking it, but also they can feel it when they're not taking it.
Mm,
And that's just part of the intelligence of nature, that we are part of nature and we are biological organisms. We can tell if there's something good going in our body, we can generally feel it. And if we stop using that, we can often also feel that too. Like, hey, what am I not doing? Or what changed recently?
yeah, thank you for that. That's really important. And with so many different toxins around us, people get, panicked and upset, like, well, what can I do? And that's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, the premise of this show is, all the fear that we have and what are we against? We almost get bottled up. And to moving into vibrant health, I love what you just said. That's the for aspect. I'm for vibrant health. And part of that doesn't have to be this sudden, fast food. And I don't mean fast food literally, but just this societal thing we have about, well, we got to heal quickly and we got to, in overnight, if you take our product, you're going to feel 10 times better and those kind of things. There's a real gentle approach that can happen and people don't have to, necessarily feel like they're rushing through something. So I appreciate that very much about your products. And speaking of your products, I'd love to have you share your screen if you would, because I want people to see your website. And you can talk about any of the products that you think are important to talk about today. And also would love to have people hear about some of the newer things you have, like the is it infrared? What, wristband? Is that
Yep.
right? Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Thanks, Jenny. I'll get to that for sure. So this is our site, and I know that you've got a link for that, so people can click on
yeah.
that and they can navigate to the website. But Ascent Nutrition is the company, and a couple of these products that we were just talking about, the pine needle extract. So we wild harvest this from pine needles, eastern white pines up in Canada, and then we extract it and hold it in organic vegetable glycerin. So it's got a very sweet taste. It's incredible. It's got shikimic acid in there. Shikimic acid is the main constituent in Tamiflu. Now, obviously, we're not saying it's going to treat you or do anything like that, but that's what shikimic acid is, and that's just naturally found within the pine needles, eastern white pines, and some other species. But that's what we're doing there, and that's like the pine needle tea alternative. A
Mm,
lot of people have heard about pine needle tea, but we made this to where it's easy and convenient for people to take instead of needing to make a tea and go through that whole process. Um, One of the other ones we were talking about is this humic and fulvic acid. Show a couple photos here. So again, it's from the soil, and it actually acts as a little mini battery charger. It can provide this little trickle charge of voltage. So fulvic is loaded in electrons, 14 tetratrillion, and that helps to scavenge free radicals and kind of balance out those free radicals itself. It brings them to neutral. But also it's doing the heavy metal detox like we've talked about, or it can do
mm,
that. We actually had a person leave us some feedback some months ago that she was she was about to take the product. She took a magnet and placed it on her chest and then placed it on her torso, and it was sticking both places. And after taking one bottle of this, just one, and this was the only thing different that she did, we
mm,
really wanted to make sure she shared this with us,
mhm,
that the magnet stopped sticking. And
mm,
she had psoriasis on her skin for 30 years that
mm,
all flaked off, dried up and flaked off.
mm,
So again, we're not saying it's going to do any of that, but that's what someone has reported. And there's
mhm,
other great feedback on that as well. That's just, one of the main big ones. But people actually having noticeable effects mentally, physically, emotionally, even, omega 3s are so well known to help us physically, psychologically on a physical level, but also emotionally. It has great capabilities to actually regulate emotions and be uh, a balancing or have a balancing effect within the brain. And omega 3s, DHA specifically, is actual a physical component of all neurons and of all cells. So we're talking about the cells. Omega 3s incorporate into the outer cellular membrane of cells, and it acts to help shuttle in nutrients or allow nutrients in, specifically fats, but also keep toxins out. So, why do we have issues digesting and getting nutrients in? It's what we all talked about earlier, and it ties back into the cellular membrane, because cellular membranes are being broken down with all these toxins,
mm,
unclean food, the pesticides, the heavy metals, all that. But when we start to repair and build strong cellular membranes, that stuff can, benefit. So DHA, people know about omega 3s. It's essential. We actually have to get omega 3s in the diet. And when we do, it helps to incorporate into the neurons, into the eyes, into the cardiovascular system, every cell in the body, literally, but specifically in those parts of the brain, the eyes, the heart. And so what that does is it helps to build up those omega 3 levels and helps us in many different ways. So we know helps support healthy inflammatory response, helps support healthy memory, focus, cognition, recall, verbal fluency, even helps athletes actually have quicker reaction times. Their eyesight can get better for some people. They reported that. Um, but there's tons of studies out there on omega 3s on PubMed. So this is like not even anything theoretical. This is very well known that omega 3s do these things in humans. But what we've done, Jenny, is we bypass the fish and fish oil industry entirely. Most
mm,
people think of fish oil when they think of omega 3s,
yeah,
but fish eat algae because algae is the source. Algae is the
mm,
firsthand source of these omega 3s. So we cut out all the unnecessary steps that don't even have to happen with the fish oil industry, all the processing, all the transporting, all the ships that have to go out to sea, all the stuff involved. We completely bypass all that and water extract a very pure, clean source of this. We grow it in hermetically sealed tanks,
mm,
clean water, and make sure it's super clean. And then we show the COA on this. So this is something we proudly show what is and is not in here. and the levels of which. Okay, if you go and ask a fish oil company, can you show this? They may do it, but it's not going to have these sorts of results, and they aren't going to really ever be showing it publicly, openly on their site proudly. They may have something to kind of try to spin their narrative, but ask them for all these tests, compare it with this, and it's not going to. We also don't use seed oils like other algae oil companies, and it sounds like I'm putting other companies down. I'm not. I support all these other farm or nutraceutical companies. We aren't even competing with them. We've got something that just is, it stands out on its own, and that's all we have to do. We don't even have to put others down. I'm just making it relevant for people, is why is this different and how does it compare to other companies. We also then mix it with organic lemon peel oil, cold pressed, to kind of mask that algae slash fishy taste that come with algae products. But this covers it up. And so people love the taste of it. Kids use it. They love it. Adults, everyone in between.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And, actually pets too, they can use it. They would want to use the pure version, the one without the lemon peel oil. But pets need it just as much as us, the dogs and the cats. And we've got the amounts listed out that a person can take, and some suggestions from a vet that we work with for dog and cat use based on their weights and how much.
That's
So
excellent.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. No, go ahead, Jenny. I was gonna go to the a couple of these other ones, unless you got something to.
No, I was just kind of stunned with with the amazing product that you have there, and the thought of going to the source, and cutting out the middleman, so to speak, and just going right to where it comes from in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And for these others, so we've got a wild harvested pine pollen tincture. How this is different from the pine needle is
Mhm.
that this has 200 different nutrients in it, and it's
Mm,
nature's highest source of DHEA. So we were just talking about DHA, but DHEA is a very different compound. That's what they call like the happiness hormone or the youthing hormone. Men and women both, we need it and we benefit from it immensely. And it's a major steroid. These are like plant hormones, and pine pollen is nature's highest source of these plant hormones. These phytohormones, steroids, they're all interchanged with those words, but it's nature's highest source, and it can have really beneficial, strong effects in terms of balancing out hormones for
mm.
both men and women, helping with support healthy libido, helping support healthy detoxification, cardiovascular health. Uh, Chinese medicines use pine pollen for, hundreds, probably thousands of years, at least a couple thousand, probably more. Um, and it's just a strong, rejuvenative food that they've often used in, traditional Chinese medicine. So, that's one thing as well. And then a couple of these others, the mushrooms. So we've got lion's mane and agarikon. They're organic. We grow them differently. We grow them a little bit longer, and the way that we start them is a little bit different. And so what ends up being the case is that we have higher amounts of the different important bioactive constituents, the different compounds that we want to get in the diet. We get higher levels of those because we're growing them longer as we can, and just a few other things that we're doing to maximize it. And we end up with a very strong finished product of that. People love these. People really love. The Department of Defense and the NIH and NIAID were actually studying agarikon back shortly after 9/11.
Mm.
And there's a fascinating story out there about that. It's kind of a long one, so I won't get into it. But the NIH, the DoD, they had a program called Biodefense BioShield. They were studying basically compounds in nature that were active against certain viruses, we can say. They were studying to see if there were compounds out there plants, mushrooms, pharmaceuticals. They studied all of it to see, is there something out there that was, counteractive against some of these different things they were looking at.
Mm.
So, the short answer is agarikon is very strong, and you can find more information out there on that. Some of the stuff we can't really get into because it is very hot and controversial in a good way. It's a very beneficial mushroom for sure. Um, but people can learn a lot more about that if they search for it. And then what you were talking about, Jenny, is the red light therapy wristband. Yeah, we've got this, and this is incredible. We know that light is beneficial to us, specifically certain wavelengths of red light and just within the whole light spectrum. And so we took a couple of these different known positive frequencies, have this in this product, and this is what we've got with it.
I wanted to ask you about the pine products because I remember reading somewhere in what part of your literature that there's something about they're very similar to our DNA or something about that. Can you, I'm sure I'm butchering the concept. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So we humans have about 3 billion base pairs of DNA in our genome that's been sequenced. And pine trees, some of them have up to 22 billion. So about 7 times the amount of genetic material that some of these pine species have as compared to us humans. And so we share some of that in common. And so naturally, some of our physiological processes can benefit from some of the natural compounds found within certain species of pine. And then on a mushroom level, we actually share more of our DNA in common with mushrooms than we do with
Oh,
plants. So, taking pine products, from the certain species, can be beneficial. And then also the mushrooms, because we share so much of our DNA in common with them, that we benefit from the compounds that they are making to where they defend themselves in nature from, the elements that they're, facing, the wind, the rain, the sun, all the different things that are going on, the temperature changes, the snow, the ice, all of it. They form defenses. Some of those are compounds, and some of those compounds are known to be, nutrients that benefit us humans. So it's really cool how there is that symbiotic nature or relationship between us humans and what can be found in nature. And it's clear we're organic beings in terms of like an organic chemistry angle. If you're looking at it from that scientific angle, we are organic chemistry in the living flesh. And if we have if we've taken in nutrients that are also, part of this organic makeup in nature, then we can benefit.
that's excellent. Good information. It's just taking things that are closer to who we are and what will help us. And I really appreciate so much the dedication that you've put into this over the years is just phenomenal. And the passion that you've had from your own experience and carrying that forward to the poker and learning critical thinking and the studying and then implementing this company. I mean, what an incredible amount of work and dedication that's taken to get to this point. And when people go to your site, if they look at it and wonder, where should I start? They have all these amazing products. If I could only pick three or something, what would you suggest? Just in general, knowing that everybody's different and all of that. And, we would want to never encourage anybody to go against something that their doctor or their naturopath or whatever was saying. So, but just separate from all of that, what would you suggest?
So the first would be the algae oil DHA for the omega-3 content. 95% of Americans are deficient in omega-3s. Even if you're eating salmon and fish throughout the week, you're most likely not getting enough. And this is, coming from very good science, not just one paper, but literally thousands of papers on omega-3s out there. You can find all of them. In general, it's known that us humans, we want to have an omega-3 index percentage of around 8 to 12%. Most people are around 3 to 4, below 4. Uh, so to get that up, you have to consume, in general, what they suggest, like a therapeutic amount, is about 2 grams or 2,000 milligrams of omega-3s per day.
Mm,
For context, if you're eating salmon, a 3 ounce serving, let's say just regular on average, you would need to have, if you're going to get even 1,000 milligrams a day of omega-3s, not 7,000 a week, you would have to have about 5.5 servings of salmon per week. If you wanted 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams of omega-3s per day at 14 a week, that's about 11 servings of salmon per week. No one's really going to do that. There might be some people, but like the masses are not going to be doing that. You can get small amounts from things like walnuts and flax seeds and some nuts and things like that, some plant sources, but it's not a good source for omega-3s. First of all, a lot of it's in the ALA form, which it's only about a 5% conversion to what you need for, DHA and EPA. But again, like if you want to get 2,000 milligrams a day, you got to find a good source for it. And so again, what we've done is just go to the source, which is algae, and we just water extract it in a way where a serving is 1,000 milligrams.
Mm,
And so you can easily get your amount in just one serving per day.
wow.
Yeah. And it tastes good. It's very easy to do. So that's one of the main things. We all humans benefit, especially the pregnant and nursing mothers and the kids, especially them. Super important for them to develop their brain, their eyes, their nervous system, their heart, all of that properly. So the pregnant mother definitely wants to be loading up on omega-3s while she's nursing, as the child is growing up. Even, the 99-year-old grandfather, he needs omega-3s just as much as the child. I mean, arguably the child needs it more in that time, but the concept is the same. We all need it. So that's the first. The humic and fulvic acid would be the second, for all the reasons that we, talked about, specifically helping with nutrient absorption and helping with just general healthy detoxification. Those like be the big things. And then a third one really sort of depends. Mushrooms in general, people tolerate well. Mushrooms target different systems in the body. So that's a good, just like, nutritive, comprehensive product that people can take. Sea moss is another one. We've got an organic sea moss that's got 190 plus minerals in it and a lot of different vitamins, minerals, fatty acids. The pine pollen could be another one too, kind of interchangeably with the sea moss, but those few would be the ones that I would look at first.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So as we wrap up here, is there anything else you can think of that you'd like to share with the audience on any topics we've covered, or even something else that you feel is important for today?
No, I mean, I think that's it. It's we're in really interesting times, and I know that, the truth's coming out. We can all see that. And I really believe that for industries like this, we are going to be uh, untied from the language that we can use. There's a lot of language that I wish I could just tell people straight up what these things are actually doing. But the time will come where we can openly and freely speak and be very specific with the language. But again, it's the whole thing of what we've seen. They try to limit speech and they try to make it where you can't say certain things on what this product might be able to do or can do, or things like that. And of course, there does need to be a fine line and some sort of uh, you know, regulation. That's not really the best word, but something like that in place for people to not make outrageous claims. I
Mhm.
fully agree with that, but they've taken it way too far where, I mean, you can't even talk about simple things of just simple known things. You can't even talk about, hibiscus being able to lower blood pressure. Like, we know it does that. It's safe, it's fine. But if you would say that, and you're selling a product with that, we don't sell hibiscus, by the way. But if we did, and I said this is going to lower or could lower your blood pressure, they don't want you saying that. So it's language that, it's going to it'll change for sure. And people in this industry and in general, and doctors will be able to more openly speak and tell people what's actually going on. And for me, I would love to come back when that time comes, and then I'll go even deeper into this stuff and tell people exactly what these things are doing.
Yes, thank you. And thank goodness we're in that process of moving from the old and into where we're going, which is really all about the premise here of moving from being reactive to being proactive. And you'll have more knowledge and more ability to speak and communicate with others so they can become more proactive about becoming vibrantly healthy, which is going to affect every other area of their lives. And speaking of that and your products, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to have a link below, as Lance was saying. And if you use a certain code that the company has given me, which is Ascent10, you'll get a discount if you go use the particular link that I'm sending you. And I am an affiliate. I want to make that very clear up front. And so you'll get that code, or excuse me, you'll get that discount, as I mentioned, if you go with that code. So Lance, I just want to thank you again. I really appreciate it. It's so helpful to talk about things like this and help people understand that although there is just a mess going on with a lot of our systems, that there are bridges and pathways to walk to get to the side where we can be proactive and take better care of our health. So thank you so much. Really a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Jenny. This was amazing. I really appreciate it.